it is now my pleasure to call back all our presenting speakers for the roundtable. And of course, the symposium convener.
Wow, we've had quite a spectrum the last 2 days, from the Watson volumes to opium trade and its relationship with cotton, which seeded early industrialization, modern industrialization in India, to Batik and Shantiniketan. A big round of applause for all our speakers and panelists who travel from all parts of the world and the country to be here, who spent enormous energy, time to prepare their presentations so that we could premise material which has largely been unpublished before, and to complement both the exhibition and the mandate and scope of the publication which has been presented. May we please invite all the speakers who are present here for a joint session now. Paula, Sonia, Rosemary, John, Avalon, Anna, Maria Vronska, friend, Pavan Jain, Ritu Sethi,
Only Dr. Ghosh isn't here yet.
no, Darshan, please. Darshan. And while we gather, I'd also like to mention the names of people, a team, a dedicated team that has worked tirelessly for several months on making this 3-day opening program a grand success. Radhika Shah and her team, Kavita Patel, Shubham Cheena, who've been the backbone of this initiative, Dimsi Anand, Alicia, Anushka, Sri Datta, Tanmoy, Sanjay, the entire team from the Weaver Studio and the Weaver Studio Resource Center. A big round of applause for this dream team that's coordinated over several months to make this happen. Maybe I can be, yeah? Okay. John, why don't you come here and I'll come. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for this. Maria, you were talking about Surendranath Kar and his batik, and some of us may know this, that the Calico Museum, which was post-independence first private collection and museum of Indian textiles, it is housed in a building in Ahmedabad in the retreat complex of the Sarabhai family, and it was designed by Surendranath Kar. And there are so many connections and layers that all your presentations have brought up. I think it's going to take us weeks and months to really process the kind of information and insights that have been generated. Really quite amazing. We're going to treat this both as a joint session to discuss questions among ourselves, and if there's time to invite questions and comments from the participants and the delegates, as well as a way to wrap up day 2, as I did this morning for day 1. Sonia's presentation, I'd like to begin with. Sonia, you've expanded our understanding of muslin. Why don't I stand? Sonia, your presentation, as I'd begun to spoke about muslin from various parts of the country. You showed images of muslin from various parts of the country. And I think that will further add to our understanding of Bengal muslin. And with that, I wanted to raise a common question to Sonia, to Rosemary, Avalon, and Paula. In your encountering material muslin, both chikankari as well as jamdani, have you been able to identify any specific physical characters that, say, distinguish the Deccan muslin from Bengal muslin, or other parts of the country? Is that something that you've sort of looked at closely, or any insights have emerged in your looking at the actual material?
I think it's feel as much as anything. I think it can probably be measured, but in the end, if you feel a fine Dhaka muslin, it doesn't feel like anything else. Sorry, I'll start again.
Thank you.
I was trying to say that personally, since I don't have any scientific way of evaluating this, it's what it feels like. And I'm sure that a weaver or any other expert or who's somebody handled a lot of textiles, first of all, that's what they do. And the old Dhaka muslin was made from this particular cotton, so it does end up with this particular field, as I feel, which I explained a little bit. I don't know.
I don't think I had many opportunities to really experience antique muslin. It's only quite recently that some people, and particularly Mamta in Lucknow, has been working chikankari on muslin newly embroidered, newly woven from Bengal. And certainly the outcome are absolutely outstanding, because the hand-woven muslin take the embroidery, the very fine embroidery, especially if we use what we call the kacha thread. It's really amazing. But I don't have myself also a scientific, so I go by what I mean. I when I'm told that he's handmade and spun, and woven muslin, I mean, I take it as a true statement, and I can't make the difference. I mean, I can make the difference with mill-made cloth and with chicken on the woven muslin is absolutely beautiful.
Avalon, yes. Any thoughts there?
On the basis of what's in the V&A's collection, certainly the muslins from Dhaka, can you hear me?
Better,
are very supple and soft. They lie very flat. When they fold, they have a kind of static adherence, whereas the ones from South India are quite stiff and bouncy and sort of want to come away from each other. I don't know if that's a finishing technique. I don't know if that's a starching process. I don't know if that's to do with the different cotton varieties, but there's a very obvious texture and appearance to them when you see them side by side.
The only thing I can add to all this, as we haven't yet done proper scientific analysis of the fibres, is that none of the regional ones, as far as I'm aware, come close to the fineness of the Dhaka ones. So just on that basis, if it's very, very fine and ethereal, it can only be from Dhaka. But as far as distinguishing ones from South India or Chanderi or Madhya Pradesh, I don't know if we yet have a a proper way of distinguishing those different centres.
Okay, thank you so much. My next question is for Anna and Pika. Materials, could you tell us a little about the kind of materials that we find in Indo-Portuguese embroideries, in Satgaon quills, in kolchas? We know that, I mean, is there a particular way in which materials are used? Also a little about the stitches, if you could share with us about those genres of embroideries.
They have different materials. It could be cotton, silk, even linen. I think that the best ones, they are on silk, the linen, silk, and cotton embroidered. The thread is embroidered in cotton, and that's why they are so delicate. And sometimes the silks just fade, and I think that's why they are so hard to read. Also, in terms of techniques, I would say that Indo-Portuguese quilts are mainly chain stitch. The finest ones, they are so small, and the filling is, unfortunately, I wasn't able to show you, but even the muscles of the animals, they have movement. They stitch, and the stitch makes a movement that gives you the muscle of the lion, or it's absolutely amazing, and it's very, very fine. The last one I show you, my canta, it's just back stitch, running stitch, cotton on cotton. So it is different. Even though you can find some, for example, you can find chain stitch in some of the Indo-Portuguese quilts, yeah.
I actually stuck my neck out and said this somewhere in the book. I personally think that these two things were happening in parallel. What we call kantha as a category and what we tend to call kolchas as a category.
Yes.
And we made distinctions. My hunch is based on John Irwin's subset as to what is a kolcha. And the more I see the permutations and combinations, right, of base materials, of piecing techniques, of embroidery, there's both shared in both. We do have a chronological gap, and what lives where for the most part, but there's enough to suggest that the continuities are extremely strong, right? We tend to think of kantha as running stitch, but there is a lot of chain stitch. And I think it is because people haven't identified technique, but when I look at it, I'm absolutely sure. And when you flip chain stitch around, if you know how to embroider, it can look like a running stitch, right? And the same with back and stem. They go back and forth, depending on which side you're looking at. All of this makes a huge understanding. It's my conviction that the people who were looking did not embroider. And that, so in terms of stitching techniques, there's a lot more complexity than we had earlier appreciated. And of course, when you look at individual motifs, we're all starting to see now, you have your Mayurpanki, you have your, Solomon on a chair or a Babu on a chair. These variations that are adapted for the market, right? And in terms of technique also, there's a lot of variation in both genres, right? So if we think of one is entirely commercial and the other is entirely domestic, I'm not sure. There's probably a lot more fuzziness than we have yet uncovered.
Yes,
and there was one detail that we forgot to mention, that, for example, in the red culture, the first one that I show, the way the filling of the dress is made, you can find very similar patterns in kantas, in the way they are dressed, also the way they fill the dress.
Avalon, Rosemary, would you have any thoughts about this? Yes.
Is it on? Yes. I just wanted to add that when I was asked to say a few words about a favourite piece in the exhibition yesterday, I chose that small kanta which with an inscription which supposedly has the date 1813. And I chose that not because of the date, which, if that really is 1813, it's one of the earliest surviving cantas, but also it, I think, shows a real strong connection between the 19th century canta and the Anna's culture and the one in Hardwick Hall, the earliest known ones, because it has the same very simple line, no infilling of colour, very kind of wiry outline, which I think is a very strong connection between the two traditions.
Thank you for that.
That particular katha is in the collection of Weaver Studio Resource Center. There's a story, and Ruby Pal Chaudhary has helped us to read the entire lettering. But sometimes some experts call it kantha. Some say it has a great influence of how the kolcha was made. So we are unable to really decipher or specify, like in the chicken curry, whether it's embroidered or jamdani woven. We're not able to pinpoint on that piece. So if I could ask the experts here to give us some kind of a...
I think we're talking about the problem of categories.
Yeah. Why?
Right? Individual objects lie along a long continuum between these two poles.
Yeah.
And this is a great example to plot the complexity of beyond, katha and kocha.
Yeah. So with Anna taking us to early Bengali embroideries and the Sadgaon quilts or kolchas and suggesting their connections with katha, which has been reinforced now, we had a pictorial analysis of a few kathas by Pika Ghosh, depicting a very particular event that brings us to the politics of cloth and its patterning to offer a means of solidarity and empathy among women. Niaz Appa's presentation, it was really, really a privilege that she could record that presentation last minute and send it to us. It showed us the continuation of this katha as a means for contemporary expression, reflecting social and cultural themes, including for political protest and resistance, as well as the recreation of new national identities in Bangladesh. We have, of course, evoked aesthetic and trade aspects of fabric earlier in the symposium. Staying with embroidery, Dr. Rosie and Dr. Pavan, Zardozi, metallic embroidery, which is something that we see so much in apparel and home furnishings among the Sheherwali Jain families in Murshidabad. There has been some conjecture that these kinds of embroideries came to Bengal with the court and the movement of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, that he brought very richly embroidered traditions into this region. Do we know more about the kind of ways, modes of production for these kinds of, or do we know anything about these modes of production, design in Murshidabad itself? Because there's so much of that being used in Murshidabad, it's been patronized, and it also links to Shubham's question yesterday about gota, about that kind of lumpy and that gold lace, which we find in 19th century records, which is mentioned as being from Murshidabad. Do we have any information? Because when contemporary designers take this idea of the Zardozi in the post-independence period in India and take it and transform it into branded couture and bridal wear, contemporary bridal wear, then they're basically drawing upon this kind of tradition wherever in the country you go today, whether it's Chennai, whether it's Mumbai, whether it's Delhi. These metallic embroiderers are from Bengal, fundamentally or largely. So is there anything that either Dr. Pavan or Dr. Rosie could share about that, or any of the panelists?
Well, I think there is a close connection between Lucknow and the court in Kolkata after Wajid Ali Shah moved there, and Murshidabad, because the families intermarried. And you've got to remember that they were both Shia families. And we've not actually talked about religion at all here, but I think that's a very powerful motive. So, yes, I'd say more explanation is needed there. And we certainly know that Wajid Ali Shah brought his tailors from Lucknow, so they settled in Kolkata at Garden Reach, 1856, and there are many descendants there today. When you go to Garden Reach, you can talk to the tailors and they would tell you quite proudly that their ancestors came from Lucknow, and they're bound to have brought with them the Lucknow style, which was then adopted. And I can quite see that there would be trips up to Murshidabad where, the relatives are there. So very close links. And as I say, perhaps we ought to consider religious links as well. John's talked about the Haji Rumals, and I feel there must be a lot more connected with religion that we haven't perhaps quite covered.
It's actually quite interesting because in many prominent Shia courts across the country, you have this huge patronage for Zardozi at an absolute highest level. Yes, please.
Yeah. As we all know, there has been always great migration of workers or karigars all throughout the world, within India, from one state to the other. So sometimes you would say that weavers came from Gujarat to Bengal, or we would say the Zardozi karigars came from Lucknow to Murshidabad, or vice versa. I mean, there is little historical documentation about it, but I would say these influences we will find at all times. And I think it is always a question, or there is always a debate, like how we call whether Ikat went from Orissa to Southeast Asia or vice versa, or how Ikat, it's being done all over the world. Almost 30 countries do Ikat. But so the very idea of where did it originate, I think it is a moot point, because there is a constant flux or movement of workers and karigars always, wherever there is patronage. As rightly, when Wajid Ali Shah lost his crown, he moved to this part of the country. And that's how a lot of karigars came with him. So I guess that will be my answer, yes.
Great. Thank you. I mean, I particularly was interested in this because for the first time we do have, Rahul Jain's latest book on the collection of embroideries with the Nizams in Hyderabad has drawn attention to what he identifies and suggests as very specific schools of such metallic embroidery. And he attributes this to one very prominent school to be that of Tipu's. He calls it the Tipu school in South India. So I was wondering if, we could start looking at these kinds of embroideries as a school, a Bengal school, if we further pursue this research as some of the panelists are proposing. So with the sessions by John Gillow and Maria Vronska-Friend, we understood the relationship of textiles from Bengal with other parts of Asia. We've heard a lot about its links with Europe and the West. What we got to know about its relationship with other parts of Asia, not only in the historical period, but also in the modern period, and connecting it, thank you so much for that, connecting it into the contemporary landscape of Kolkata, Shantiniketan, and Bengal. We discussed earlier, both yesterday and the day before at the exhibition walkthrough, that this represented a kind of Indian nationalism. It was an aspect of Indian nationalism which was a part of a cultural renaissance in Bengal, expressed in parallel to the movements of boycott of foreign cloth, Swadeshi, and Khadi led by Gandhi. I have a specific question for John related to your presentation.
Go far away.
I was told, I was looking at a body of these kinds of Haji Rumals of various kinds. Some of them were white on white, some of them were muga on muga, some of them had cotton, some of them were fairly large, almost like women's dupattas. I was just wondering whether you've encountered any understanding of machine embroidery being used in any of them in the 20th century? Or all of them?
I haven't seen them.
Okay.
I think my guess is the tradition of the Dhaka embroideries died out about the time of the Second World War, certainly with partition. It's really a moot point, but in my wanderings looking for textiles, I've never come across a machine embroidered one.
Okay. Darshan, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was asked to look at our textiles and look how some of our craftspeople would still have the skills to reproduce it. So I showed the Haji Rumal to my expert craftsperson embroiderer, Shaukat Ali, who has reproduced from the Forbes Watson catalogs 5 of the pieces downstairs at Chikalgari. He said that the Haji Rumal that we had, when he turned it around and he showed it to me, he said, this is 100% machine embroidered. This is not hand embroidered.
Yes.
And
So
he's
I have
willing
also
to hand embroider it.
I have
He's
also
willing
got
to
that
hand
feedback.
embroider it. So
Yes.
I had written to Mank also. So
I
at
have
that
also
point,
in parallel got this feedback of pieces which are suggested to be by embroiderers saying that this didn't happen by hand, and therefore the questions.
therefore the question. And the second point was that when I've been traveling to Murshidabad quite often, and what I've wondered is that between Shirampur, Murshidabad, Chandanagar, all of these places, we've really lost so much. And there's nothing existing in these centers whatsoever. If we talk about the Mughal Karkhanas or the Zardozi embroideries, or we talk about Chandanagar and the Forashtanga dhutis, or we talk about Fulia and the Begum Bahar saris, or we talk about the reversible saris, they've all disappeared. And that's one of the things that I really think that Weaver Studio Resource Center is looking forward to, having mentorship from everybody here and on the stage to look into all of these gaps that I find that are going to be very interesting for the next part of the research. So I'd welcome anybody and everybody who could put in an email to us and tell us if there is any starting point
In fact,
to some of these
I think, Darshan, if I may
questions.
pick up from there, I think a related question that Shubham and I have been talking a lot about is when we look at some of these saris from Shantipur, from other parts of rural Bengal, we're also like unsure which of these might have been mill-produced and hand-produced because the hand production is so finished. I wonder if anyone would have any insights about this because all of them use supplementary warp in the borders. And that is something that we see in power looms as well, which, in early 20th century onward saris. So, I mean, in case there are any perspectives here, or we could open up, I think, the discussion to the delegates and guests and participants. Any questions? We have about 15 minutes before we move to the next session.
Good afternoon. My questions on the GI related issues, which...
Sorry, sir, may I request you to also introduce yourself for the benefit of everyone?
Okay. I am Niloy Kumar Bosak from Fulia. Okay, I am a researcher from Shantiniketan. So we know that there are many aesthetical and technical features which indicates the textiles. That is, Jamdani is a one unique aesthetical and technical characteristics. Balucharis, Benarasi, that every textile have a unique aesthetical and technical aspects. So the arguing the two neighboring countries on Tangail Shari, whose GI is, but the main important question is how can I identify a Tangail Shari? Is it the artifacts produced by the Tangail Bosak weavers? As all the sharis produced by the Tangail weavers called Tangail Shari? Or is it any specific aesthetical or technical aspects which itself represent the I am Tangail Shari? Thank you.
May we have the mic, please? Yes.
Very interesting question and really important question because I have been told in the last 2 days that, the GI is going to reduce and remove inventiveness. No, it isn't. Because you are free to produce what you want, but when you refer to a Tangal sari specifically, you follow the process that authorized users themselves have stated within the legal document. The certification unit will say, yes, this is a Tangal sari and stamp it. But during the rest of the 24 hours and the 365 days of the year, you can produce what you wish. But it may not be a Tangal, it may be something completely different because weavers are so clever and can put their mind to so many things.
but it's not necessarily a Tangal, not necessarily following the process, and therefore it shouldn't be branded a Tangal. So I hope I've explained it properly, but please let me know if I haven't.
But also Tangail is, we have two kind of views on what is Tangail, because one, we have the historical Tangail in the exhibition, and that is brocaded in a certain way, and then, you know, there's Tangail which we receive today as a trade term, I would say, rather than a more academic or historical term, so there's that difference too. And
also, it's what you have written in your document, what you have submitted to the GI committee. Because when you sit together to decide how to fill in the form with the lawyer, with historians, with weavers, when they state how it is filled, the process, I'm sure it is done with some level of consultation. And when that consultation takes place properly, that like it has at the moment in Ajrakpur, and for the Ajrak, they all sat down to discuss what they should put down so that that can be certified, and they have put in the thought process themselves. The craftspeople, block makers were themselves involved.
so it's the community of makers who are applying for a GI who then decide
and they
or
should,
define.
They should,
right,
alongside the lawyers.
Okay. Any more questions?
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, please. Yes, Saiful. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Thank you, Mayank. Just a quick comment to say that this has been fabulous. Absolutely, the exhibition, the artifacts, the expertise that has been over here. I mean, my head is still spinning from everything that I've seen over here, and that's not because of my age or the lack of blood pressure medicines, I can tell you. But really, fabulously well done. I wish we could clone a few more Mayanks and Darshan Shahs. I do feel that I'll just make a comment about it. Is that this is about a shared legacy, but I think that in terms of what we say, because I'm from Bangladesh and there's only two of us from Bangladesh over here, so sadly it's not been much of a shared audience, and we know why that is so. But going forward, I think it's not simply about the people, the number of people that can come from Bangladesh, but there is 180 million people over there, who speak Bangla, and there's 60 million people over here. So it would be nice to actually add to the voices that are on the podium, that are intellectually present, and that can give perhaps a wider view of the legacy. I was quickly scanning through the book last night, and I must say it's a fabulously well-produced book. But when I came to the section on Jamdani, and I read Professor Chakraborty, he does not mention the UNESCO recognition and so on. So there are different points of view, but I think all of the points of view should be accommodated.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We actually had almost 50%, earlier we had invited 50% representation from Bangladesh. And as we know, it's been very difficult in the last 6 months for us to have representation. So we've tried our best to have representation, but some of our speakers didn't get visas. Some of our speakers, for other reasons, declined to be here on stage. So we've had genuine issues that you're familiar with. And so I think it was a very sincere effort on our part. We have pieces from Bangladesh in the exhibition.
Absolutely.
And again, we had to negotiate very challenging processes to get them here. So yes, so this is a sincere effort, and we've tried our best.
Absolutely, and I have no doubt about that.
Yes, and I hope Bangladesh will reciprocate now by staging this kind of a community-oriented, where several stakeholders, practitioners, historians can truly come together above differences and really give us an opportunity to come and look at collections which lie largely unpublished in Bangladesh.
Absolutely.
So I hope there will be some reciprocation from Bangladesh as well.
Well, I hope
to
so.
This. Yes.
The other point that I just very briefly mentioned is what next? I mean, in terms of crafts, I try and think about, so what's going to happen after this? I mean, we're all talking about the dangers of the decline in the craftspeople, in the profession. It's happening on both sides of the borders, probably, because I've been with the weavers over here and the weavers also in Bangladesh. I know Sonia Ashmore probably addresses it in her section on muslin when she talks about some of the revitalization work that is happening, but officially that's almost dead. So it would be nice if all the experts at some point try and give suggestions about how do we make this a living legacy, rather than, so to say, just simply look at the past and the techniques over there. A living legacy would be really good. So once again, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Ruth. Yes. May we have the mic for Ruth, please? Ruth Barnes, please.
I would like to encourage young scholars who want to take an interest in the history and the movement of Indian textiles within India, but also beyond that, to pay more attention to oral history, because there is a lot of excellent recorded history that has been part of merchant families, trade connections, etc. But there's also a lot of hidden history still in many families within India. And I think this could be a real wealth. Once you can pry it out, take your time. It's important to have people's confidence and to go beyond just the design. I think it's always important to look at the material, look at the fabric, look at how it relates, the material itself relates to designs in other media, but also pay attention to what people actually say about their collections and where it comes from and how it connects to their own family's history and to the regions where some of their ancestors actually came from. That's one point I want to make.
Yes.
And another point I would like to make, especially when I listen to Anna's connection to the relationship between South Asians and people who came from outside the region is for many decades has been looked at very much in terms of colonial history. It's very important, but beyond that, there are also personal histories. I was so much reminded of my own experience in a little town in eastern Indonesia, where every Saturday morning women gather, and it's a community that was very influenced by Portuguese Catholics in the 16th century. They gather on Saturday mornings and they sing the mass in a mixture of Larantuka Malay and Portuguese. And the women wear partly Portuguese dress. You know, their black blouses are definitely by Portuguese. I just find that so important. And these cross-cultural influences bring in a very creative element. It's not just motifs being transferred from one culture to the other, but what happens once they arrive. The creative impact is an exciting aspect to realize and to
embrace.
To write about.
To embrace,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
Thank you. I've just been informed that Dr. Niaz Zaman, Niaz Appa, is actually with us online. Welcome, Niaz Appa. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's such an honor to have you join us. How are you?
Thank you, Mayank. I'm fine. I was here much of the day, and I congratulate you for organizing this, and I'm really sorry that I could not be present in person. And I just want, if I can take just 2 minutes, Dr. Iftikhar Iqbal yesterday mentioned my name, and he was talking about, there's sort of a gap, like when the katha that Pika was discussed in detail. There was one katha that she discussed in detail. I assume that that was made in West Bengal. But like Iftikhar Iqbal said, that most of the pieces that we see in museums are from East Bengal. And my question is, I think someone should work on this, that, the Satgao quilts or the kulchas, 1700, I think that's when they sort of like ended. Then the British also imported those quilts, those Portuguese quilts, they did. But then there is a sort of gap in the 18th century when the katha making sort of disappeared from West Bengal. And I was just wondering whether anyone really knows, because a textile, of course, is, is easily destroyed, especially in our climate. But what happened, and by the mid-19th century, 1935, end of the 19th century, there were kathas. But what happened to the earlier part of the 19th century, I'd like to know. And that's one question I had. And that's sort of like bothered me, that why did it not continue in Shatgao? The influence of the Portuguese quilts, why did it not continue in that area? The only piece which has a similarity with the Shatgao quilts is a piece that Darshan has in the, writers, the Weavers Resource Center. This lovely piece. It's perhaps a fragment. The embroidery, the style, the layout is very similar to the kulchas. But then what happened after that? Sort of disappeared. And I noticed that Pika's quilt, where she talks about the murder of Elokeshi and how that was reproduced. And I thank Pika. That was a brilliant discussion of how the women embroiderer differed from the Kalighat paintings, and how very subtly she was on the side of the woman who was raped, and how in the other quills, perhaps it was not just this one murder and rape they were talking about, but multiple murders, multiple rapes of women. And there's a recent movie which I saw, I think it's called Maharaj, which is about the same thing, how, the temple, the holy man in the temple takes advantages of these little girls. But, to Pika, I was wondering, that particular piece, if you look at the embroidery of that piece, and you look at the embroidery of the pieces of East Bengal, you will see that the embroidery of East Bengal is much finer than the embroidery of West Bengal. And I do not know the answer to this question. I'm just asking this question. Why is it that there is this gap? And why is the embroidery, why are the museums, why are the collections heavily from Faridpur, Jessore, even Khulna, but not from West Bengal? Pika, any answer? Sorry, I took up so much of your time. I can't hear you, Pika. Pika, I can't hear you. I can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You know, It's very, very hard to tell because we do not have a great geographic mapping of village names to real villages on the ground, which is why I advised when Philadelphia did the exhibition in 2009 that we say Bengal. And they coined the term undivided Bengal with a series of maps to back away from this. Because provenance for material that is so exceptionally portable is very difficult to establish. So I am not quite so sure that we have enough material to do a sub-regional stylistic kind of mapping yet, given how much is fully available to assess as whole sets. You know what I mean? We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of objects, much of it is still in people's homes, and they do not want them photographed. I've had this encounter over and over. They're not interested in their heirlooms being part of a public record. So what does that do? There's all of these problems. These are domestic materials for the most part. We have collections that are, you know, as Rosemary said, accumulated by particular sets of interests at particular historical moments. And then there is the problem of mapping these place names on the ground. Most of them have not been tracked that way. And we also have a region that's shifting with the river. All of which makes me reticent to put exact style names on a map.
In fact, this was Niyazapa. This was one of the main discussions I had with Shilpa Ben, Shilpa Shah, who was here from the Tapi collection yesterday or day before when I was walking through the exhibition, and she said that one of the big contributions to the field of Bengal textiles would be if someone was to take on this aspect, to actually look, because perhaps this information lies with dealers, but they're also uncomfortable sharing the sources from where textiles are coming. So this was actually the main discussion, and she said that that is something. So if there's anyone here who's up for it, or a bunch of you, please do come forward and take this forward. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Niyazapa, for joining us. And we'll have a last word. I mean, there's so many things to ask.
I just had
Anna,
one
Anna, I wanted to, Anna, Rosemary, Avalon, this is also something, Pika, that, you know, the Goa connection, for instance. I remember just a few days before Latika Varadarajan passed away, and, you know, she was a scholar who'd looked at maritime trade and through that entered textile history. So she told me that, you know, there was this long-held view about the connection of these kolchas to the east, to the western coast of India. And then at some point it was established that they're from Bengal. But she said that we have to look at this, relook at this. It's also something that Rahul Jain has suggested in a couple of his writings and notes about pieces he's published. The kolchas or Sadgaon quilts. So that's also something, I mean, there's so much to discuss. It would take us weeks of being together, and we still wouldn't be, it would still not be enough time. But I thank all of you. Again, a big round of applause for all our panelists here and speakers. And to all of you, thank you so much for being here with us. Darshan, may I request you now to share what follows? This joint session. Sorry, I will request the speakers to just stay on and stay so that we can have a group photograph after this.
Yeah, before I say my thank yous and I say what's next, the last comment that I had wanted to make was that while we were researching the last 2 years, research Shubham is right here, and we found that, of course, the geographical changes, the silting of the ports, the Satgaon port getting silted, the demand and supply changing, the Portuguese moving on to other areas. Those were one of the gaps. And the second thing is that when we went to all the villages and all these little places and went to meet all the people who are 85, 90, 95 years old, we've recorded them. We've recorded as many as possible. And in very soon, and we will be putting out. That's how we found so many of the people who we awarded, is because they were just not recognized. Nobody knew about them, or they were working quietly, and they had their stories, and we've recorded all those stories, including we've recorded a lot of Ruby Pal Chaudhary also, and her journey of the last 70 years. So yes, documentation is extremely important. Oral history is very important, and continued studies of the kind of questions that have come up. And just to answer to Saiful is that we have attempted in the exhibition to show that all these skills still continue. We've shown contemporary pieces from everywhere, from the Jamdani to the muslin to the chikankari to the Forbes Watson reproduction to the Satgaon and the new representation. And the way to move forward is not only reproduction but to innovate and to find new markets. And that's exactly what we have started the dialogue for. So thank you very much. And I'd like to just announce that after this group photograph, we might take just a 10-minute very quick tea break. And this evening at 5 o'clock, we have Mrs. Aparna Sen, who's a extremely well-known and well-revered cinema director, actor, and has great knowledge on the subject, and is going to present costumes and textiles in cinema of Bengal. And she's put together a one-hour presentation with 8 or 9 film clips, very relevant to all that we've seen over the past couple of days of the basic saris, textiles, costumes, influences, and that came from history and textile, from the textile world into cinema and costumes. And so please, ladies and gentlemen, be here. We will only conclude at approximately 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, at 6:30, there is this performance again, the second show. But between 6 and 6:30, we have a documentary film, Apard, Opard, Shared Legacies, a small attempt to just put together a short narrative which takes you through these journey of different crafts and of the shared legacies, area of the shared legacies. So thank you very much. And as Mayank has a flight, I would like to thank him first for everything that he's been here for, from the curation of the exhibition to the fantastic curation of the symposium, 2-day symposium. And I cannot thank him enough. I cannot thank Reha, Anupamji, Abhi, the whole team. At this point of time, I haven't thanked, I never want my team to be comfortable, so I didn't thank Shubham and Kavita and the rest of the team, because I think they have a couple of more hours, they have a couple more months, a couple of more years, and maybe a couple of more decades before they'll really get my thanks. So my sincere apologies for that, but I have about 16 projects lined up, and the work starts Monday morning. Thank you very much, and thank you to all our supporters, JSW, Garden Virelli, and all our supporters here, to all the individuals who've come forward and made their contributions. It was so valuable. And I thank everybody who's been able to come here and join us and encourage us. And to each and every speaker and each and every presenter, each and every delegate, my heartfelt thanks. Thank you. Please don't leave. Please have chai, nashta, as we call it, the Gujaratis call it, and come back soon for the next session. Thank you.
Darshan, I think I'll echo everyone here when we'll say only for you.